And we are recording. Welcome to the evening of Python coding. Today we have Reuven Lerner with us. I'm wearing his shirt. Reuven is one of our more famous guests. Many people told me about him that he's gonna appear next week, or like this was last week or before. People told me and kind of anticipated him. So today we actually have him with us. And Reuven is the author of two books, and he's going to show us, and he teaches a lot of Python. So he's going to show us one of the lessons, I would say, that he would do, but actually he's going to show us the library called argparse. He chose it to show it to us. So Reuven, it's all yours. It's your floor.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jacob. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Additional welcome since we chit-chatted a little bit before the recording started. But if you're watching the recording, welcome. You don't have to know that secrets behind the scenes. So I am a full-time Python trainer. I teach companies and individuals all around the world, corporate training, video training, all sorts of other stuff, because I get a great kick out of helping people use Python better and improve their careers. And one of the reason that I chose the topic of argparse is that it solves a whole lot of problems that people don't even know they have. That basically, if you're writing a program in Python and it works with a command line, you might think, oh, well, maybe I'll want to take an argument or two. And you start to play with what you can do sort of at the basic level. And pretty soon you tie yourself up into knots trying to do more advanced stuff. And the fact that argparse comes with the standard library, so it comes with every copy of Python out there. It's really mature. It's really powerful. I thought it would be fun to show you some of the basic possibilities for working with it. We're not going to cover everything. Quite frankly, I'm sure that I don't know everything about it because it is so deep and so wide. But we'll go over a bunch of things, and hopefully you'll have questions and comments in the middle as well, and at the end. And we'll have a nice conversation about it. So I am going to now share my screen. I'm going to share just my Jupyter notebook. That looks like the right thing. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to share that. Got it. Okay, so now I'm sharing this. Now, it might seem weird that I'm whoops, just clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. It might seem weird that I'm going to be using Jupyter for this because at the end of the day, Jupyter is really more about writing code and running it, experimenting, and so forth, often in the context of data science. Now, I happen to use Jupyter as I like to call it, my Python laboratory where I can run experiments. I use it in teaching all the time because it allows me to live code and experiment with things. And if someone has a suggestion, I can sort of try things out on the fly. The one set of places, though, where Jupyter generally tends to fall down is where you need the command shell or where you need an editor, because it's neither of those in a really, really great way. But it does actually exist. So maybe even beyond argparse, you can now learn that Jupyter does some other stuff. So let me show you then. I'm going to set up a little file. So let's do a little agenda here. All right, so let's do agenda. So first of all, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And then we can say, how can we solve it poorly? And then what does argparse bring to the table? And then we can start dealing with, mandatory arguments, and we can deal with default values, and we can deal with keyword arguments. And my guess is that'll take us, well, actually, what I'm going to want to do is also, options, and we can say then, working with files. I think that will easily take the time that we have here together and then some. But that's okay. That's okay. We've got until, was it like midnight or so? Yeah, excellent. So let's start off with what's the problem that we're trying to solve, right? And the problem is pretty simple, right? So let's do it this way. If I write a Python program that wants to get input from the command line, how do I do that, right? And so basically, we're used to writing programs that take arguments, right? So I say, for example, cd/temp. Or, ls, home, something like that. And in each of these cases, we have a command I mean, I know it might be built into your shell. Let's not worry about that right now. You have a command and you have one or more arguments, right? I could even say like ls, or even ls minus L of home. Or I could say ls minus L minus big F minus D. You wouldn't want to do that, but fine. Right, so I have all these arguments, and if I write a Python program, how can I deal with that? And you might have also noticed, right, if I do this, you probably haven't even thought about this before. Or equivalently, I can say this. I can first do the D and then do the F, or I can even mix them all around, right? The order doesn't really matter. So how can we pull this off in our Python programs? And so it's really tempting to say, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'll just check sys.args. Now, those of you, if you come from a C background, then first of all, my condolences. But if you come from a C background,
it's argv, I believe.
argv. Oh, sorry. It was argv, right? So in C, we have argv, right? The vector containing the argument strings, and argc, right? The integer indicating how many strings there are. So in Python, the equivalent is indeed sys.argv. So let's play with that a little bit. So I'm now going to use Jupyter's editor. So I'm going to go back here to like the Jupyter main screen, and under new, instead of saying new notebook, I'm going to say new text file. And I'm going to change the name here to be, my arg1.py. I'm just going to give terrible names for these things. And then I'm going to say here, and I'm going to say, Python, so user bin and Python 3. And I'm going to say here, import sys, because even though sys is already loaded into memory, it is not set, the variable does not exist. So you need to do that. And I'm going to say here, for one arg in sys.argv, let's even do it this way, enumerate of sysargv, say here index. So now I'm going to get enumerate wraps itself around sysargv. Sysargv is going to be a list of strings. So actually, let's just say here, for example, print, I'll say this, sys.argv that. So here we're just going to print all of sys.argv. And here then we're going to iterate over sys.argv, printing its elements along with their indexes, right? So enumerate wraps around it, gives us the numbers, and then I can say here print index : 1 arg. All right, so this is a cute little Python program. It should work if all goes well, which it won't because I didn't finish the parentheses there. Okay, so this is all fine. Now,
can you increase the browser font a little bit more? Someone has a problem with it. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Sure. So how do I run this thing? Well, I'm going to now go back to the Jupyter homepage. I'm going to do new terminal. That's right. You can actually run a terminal from within Jupyter. And so I'll make that a little bigger there as well. So now I can say my arg1.py. Let's run that thing. And I run it. And what's it going to do? I did not provide any arguments. Oh, well, I have to say here chmod of that. And then I can run it. There we go. And look what we get. Sysargv actually already contains an element. It has the element, which is the element of surprise. No, it has the element here, which is the name of the program we're running. So always, the first argument that we get is actually the name of the program. That's how, no matter what you name or rename a program, when it gives you an error message in Unix, maybe in Windows, but I don't think so, but it can always tell you what program gave you the error, even if you rename it. And sure enough, we see that the 0th argument is my arg1. And if I say now A, B, C, D, sure enough, you're going to see that we have my arg1.py, that's the first one, then A, then B, then C, then D, as is done here. What if I want to have B and C be together as one word? Well, we know from our shell usage that we can put quotes around it. Now, notice what happens then. We get my arg1.py, that's 1, A, B, C comes together in D. Python had nothing to do with that. Nothing. It was the shell, it was Unix in this case, or the Unix shell, CSH here, that when it then invoked our program, knew to pass it only the arguments A, altogether BC, and then D. Python is just like a passive observer here, getting these arguments before it starts to do its thing. So the good news with sysargv, where can I go back here? So let's make this a little smaller here. Right, so good news with sysargv is it's easy to use for simple cases, right? We don't need to write much code. Everything comes in as a string, and we let the shell do its thing with combining arguments using quotes, etc. But there's also bad news, right? What if we want to have arguments in any order, right? Based on what we've seen, can you imagine trying to pull off this sort of ls with the 3 different arguments that can change their order? We could, but yuck, what a mess, right? Very messy. What if we want to have arguments? Well, what if we want to ensure that an argument has one of several specific values? What if we want to have arguments take values, right? So for example, we can do like, I don't know, you've seen, certainly I can't think of something off the top of my head, but right, like, often arguments, I know, like with head or tail, right? So we can say like head, -1, right? And so that's actually a bad example. Anyway, there are many examples that we could use of like, but the argument that I do like -a, as in like -a5 versus, -a7. Right? We can't do that so easily. We could, but what a pain. And so that's where argparse comes in. It reads sysargv on our behalf and then provides us with a parser that can let us work with the arguments at a higher level. That is basically what argparse is all about. And once you sort of get into the headspace of working with it, it really works really, really well. I just want to pull something up here for myself to like remember exactly some of the syntax. Okay, excellent. So how are we going to do this? Let's go back now. Where am I to here? And I'm going to now go back and I'm going to start a new file. Where is my file editor? Here we go. So I'm going to say new text file. And this is going to be my arg2.py. I should also add, I mentioned this a little bit before we started, that everything I'm doing here is in the same directory. That is all being uploaded to the GitHub repo that I hope was shared with you folks. And so within a minute or two of my making edits to any of these files, it should be on the GitHub repo. And that repo is going to stick around after this session as well. So you'll be able to look through all these files and things that I'm writing. So watch this. I'm going to say here, user-ben and Python. Great. And I'm going to say here, import argparse. Okay, now what? Now I've imported argparse, and it's going to do all the behind-the-scenes stuff. But I need to do several things. I need to, first of all, create a parser. And then I need to, declare arguments. And then I need to gather arguments. All right. And then I need to retrieve values. These are basically the 4 stages of working with argparse. Now, I should add, in most cases, argparse is not the reason you're running your program, right? Your program is supposed to do something else. Argparse is just the way that we're getting inputs from the user that we can then do something with. But this sort of outline is going to repeat itself again and again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say parser equals argparse argument parser. And here I create a new instance of argument parser, which is defined in the argparse module. And I get this parser thing. That parser is basically our conduit to getting stuff from sys.argv in a way that is easier to use, at least should be easier to use. Then I'm actually going to say nothing for now, right? None for now. And then I'm going to gather the arguments. So I'm going to say here, args equals parser.parse args. So basically here I said, I'm going to have a parser. And here I say, okay, go get those values. And then I can print whatever I want. I can say print args for now. It's not really going to help, but fine. So what happens if I run this program now? I'm going to go back to my terminal, which is here, a little bigger. I'm going to say now, so chmod this thing, and now I'm going to say my arg2.py abc. What's going to happen? It already gives us an error message. Already, argparse is saving us from ourselves. It's saying, I have no idea what you want me to do with these things. You give me A and B and C. I did not expect any of these arguments. Yeah, someone has a question or comment? Okay. So fine. So basically, and you can even see that it says, hey, bozo, you should, although it's a little more polite than that. What you really, if you don't know what you're doing, you should say my arg2.py minus h. Minus h, of course, is short for help. You can say help. And it says, oh, here are the options that you can pass. And right now, the only options you can pass are either minus h or minus help. So basically, we have a program that is, for lack of a better term, very helpful, but also unhelpful. All right. So how can I make this a little better? Well, I'm going to need to define some arguments. So I'm going to now, I'm actually going to just, can I do a save as? Maybe. Oh, you know, I'm going to save this. I'm going to see if I can do a little experiment here. And I'm going to say, oh, it's going to rename the file. No. Fine. So I'm just going to copy everything here. I'm going to create a new file. Oh, I didn't want a new notebook. I'm so used to doing new notebooks. I'm doing a new file, text file. And this is going to be, you got it, my arg3.py. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to declare some arguments that we will actually accept. I'm going to say parser.add argument. I'm going to say x. And then I'm going to say parser add argument y. And then I'm going to gather them. And then I can say print args.x and print args.y. Now, do you see the connection here? That basically, any argument I define with add argument can then be retrieved as an attribute from our parsed args. Right? So if I call it x here, it's going to be dot x here, y here, dot y here. Now, what are we doing? We are now saying whoever calls our program must supply two arguments. And whatever arguments they supply will be assigned to the attributes x and y. All right, I'm even going to put this into my, I'm going to put this into my main notebook for just a moment, which is here, no, here, yes. So grabbing arguments. So we do this. So first, create a parser. Then add one or more arguments, naming them. These are known as, by the way, positional arguments. Not to be confused with positional arguments in Python. Sorry, I startled very easily. Yet another reason why they haven't asked me to be a spy anywhere. And then, so any positional argument can then be retrieved as an attribute. Great. Let's do that. So I'm going to go now back to my terminal. And in my terminal, I'm now going to do a chmod of my arg3. And I'm going to run my arg3. And I'm going to pass it hello and goodbye. Look at that. It printed hello and it printed goodbye. Wouldn't it be nice to know which argument was which? Well, let's go back to our editor for a moment and just modify this. I can say here, I can say print args. I think that'll actually give it to us. Where am I here? Oh no, I'm only in Jupyter. That's right. Here, not here, not there we go. And look at this. When I print args, it's a namespace object. It shows x is hello and y is goodbye. Fantastic. So what if I only pass one argument? It's going to say, no. The following arguments are required. Why? You didn't pass it. So it knows that it has two arguments, x and y. It knows that both of those are mandatory. And whatever two values we pass here, those are the values it's going to get. Pretty snazzy. Questions until here. And then we're going to make things worse. And then a little better. Okay. So basically, right, this is pretty simple. But let's create, I'll just do this here. Create a calculator. I'm going to once again copy things. I'm going to create a new file, text file. I'm going to say here, I'll just call it calc.py. Let's be a little more realistic in our naming. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to create a parser. I'm going to declare arguments, and it's going to be x and y. And then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say here, print, I'm going to say args x plus, oops, that's outside the string, plus args dot y equals args x plus args dot y. See, so now someone's going to be able to call my calculator program, and we will add things for them. How great is that? By the way, it's not going to work. All right, so I'm now going to say chmod a plus x of calc, and I'm going to say now calc.py of 10 and 3. And as we all know, 10 plus 3 is 103. Thank you very much. Okay, what's really going wrong here? Obviously, these are being interpreted as strings. That basically, right, we passed 10 to x, we passed 3 to y. They were both strings, and they're added together. Technically speaking, we did nothing wrong. But of course, this is not at all what we want. So what could I do? Well, obviously, I can go and I can turn them into integers, where I can say like int of argx and int of argsy. That'll solve the problem, right? And now I can go back, I can run it again, and it'll work. But no, that seems awful. Right? Like, do I really, really want to do that? Definitely not. Yeah, there's a question? Okay. So basically, this is terrible. What I want to do instead is say, listen, Python, when you get these arguments, turn them into integers. And I can do that. I can just say type equals int. And now it takes care of that for me. And so now if I run things, look at that. And you can basically pass any type you want there. By default, it's going to be strings. Int is very common. Float is a little less common. But like, you can force it to be that, but it gets even better than that. What happens now if I say calc of 10 and ABCD? Look at this, invalid int value. That I don't need to do that sort of checking. Argparse is going to do the checking for me. And if I've passed something that's not really an integer, it's not even going to try to run the program. That is fantastic. And if I say now calc py minus h, it says, well, there are two positional arguments here, right? X and Y. Now that seems a little bare bones, yeah? So let's spruce it up a little bit. I'm going to say X, I'm going to say here, first numeric argument. I'm going to say second numeric argument. And now if I try running it, let's get this thing. Oh, it didn't like that very much. What did I, oh, haha, sorry about that. Guess I have to already, oh no, but, oh, never mind. I think it's supposed to be like Docker. Give me a moment to like find that. Okay, there's something that I'm forgetting. All right. Tell you what, let's do a quick look in the. I can find it really quickly, then I'll show you, and if not, then I'll just retreat hastily. Doc description. That's what it is. I have to pass description. Description equals. So now, if I run this thing, oh come on! Oh, because I didn't. What did I do wrong? Really? Okay, what did I get here? Oh, because the description is for the argument parser. Haha. Never mind. Action, default choice. This is known as. Oh, I thought that. Oh, help. It's called help. Gee, that seems more obvious now. All right. Last time we run it and ta-da! See how painless that was? So basically, if I pass then a help option, then that's what will be described here. And that's pretty great. So we've got it checking the number of arguments. We've got it checking the types of arguments. It's able to give us some help. What more could we possibly want? And the answer is, of course, oh, a lot more. So I'm going to now create a calc2. Oh, I didn't want a notebook. I keep doing that. I call this PY. I'm going to paste what we had before. So now I want Y to get a default value of 10. So if I just pass X, it'll add that value to 10. it couldn't be easier. I just say here, default equals 10. Done. And now, if I run, let's do a chmod on this guy, calc2. So now if I run calc2.py, I say 10 and 3, that works great. If I say just 10, because hold on a second. What did I do wrong here? Calc2.py, what did I get wrong? Default equals 10. Maybe it's not called default. All right, so now we gotta look back here again. Default. Well, that seems pretty obvious that I should be able to say default. Oh, you can only do that with positional arguments. Duh. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment then. Fine. So let's actually do this. And then we'll get to that. So what if I want to pass the arguments in any order, right? So to do that, I'll need to change them to be keyword arguments. In other words, I'll have to say minus x, 5, and minus y, 3. But I'll also be able to say minus y, 3 and minus x, 5, in that order. Don't do. How do I do that? Say here, minus x and minus y. Having a minus before the name of the argument makes it a keyword argument. And now, let's assume that I've actually got this working now. So now if I run calc2 and watch this. I run it by itself. Oh, come on, don't do that. So it's going to say here, I want minus x and minus y. And we have to pass minus x first numeric and minus y second numeric. So I can now say minus x of 10 minus y of 3, and it works. Or I can say minus y of 10 and minus x of 3. Now, obviously, for addition, who cares? There are many, many cases in which you will want to be able to pass them in any order. And this is the way you can do it. So we now have the infrastructure for writing programs that take arguments in any order. That's pretty great with so little code. Now, if I want to provide a default, now I can say default equals 10. And now, if all goes well, it should allow me to do that. So now if I just say minus x 10, look at that. Minus y has a default value. And if I just say calc minus h, now it's going to say minus x and minus y. I guess it doesn't show. I thought it would show the default, but fine, or that is the default. So if I just say calc2, though, it's going to say, no. Oh, actually, here, none type in int. So how can I say, no, you can't do that. It has to be, it's required. Well, I think I can say here, required equals true. So I'm going to go back here, and that maybe has a default, but this is going to be required equals true. So now, we have minus x and minus y. X is required, y has a default, which makes sense that it would not be required. And now, where's my terminal? I can run this here. And now it's saying, no, the following arguments are required x. And if I say minus x3, now it works. By the way, what if I just say 3? It's going to say, nope. Once we've made it into a keyword argument, it needs to continue being a keyword argument. So in this little snippet of code, we have managed to get a help system. We've managed to turn both of the arguments into integers, and if they can't be turned into integers, to track that. We've managed to ensure that x is required and that y has a default. Pretty snazzy. I just want to show you one more thing, and then we'll see if there are questions or we can go into a discussion and so forth. So let's do another file here. All right, let's do here like trying to think here. Sure, let's do count vowels.py. All right, so this is going to be, you're thinking of going public soon. This is your ticket to IPO success. So basically what I want to do is this program will take a file name as an argument, and will print the number of vowels, A, E, I, O, U, it finds in that file, right? We assume that it's a text file. So how can that look? Well, I'm going to grab a bunch of stuff from here from my Calc 2 because so much of this is boilerplate. So import argparse, we got to do that. Create parser, got to do that. Declare arguments, yeah, well, what argument am I going to have? I'm going to have here F. That's going to be name of the file. And, well, it's going to be a string, right? And required is true. Okay, and we're going to get the arguments. And then what am I going to do with the values here? I'm going to say total equals 0. For one line in open, we'll say here args.f, right? Because args.f is going to be the name of that string of that file. For one character in one line, if one character in ARU, then total plus equal 1. And then we'll say here print val count is total. Right? Nothing too exciting. But can I run this? Of course I can. I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm going to say chmod a plus x of count vowels.py. I'm going to say count vowels of, let's do Etsy password, my favorite punching bag. And oh, didn't like I have to say here, oops, count vowels of my Etsy password. And it tells me there are 1,889 vowels in there. Okay, I believe it. I mean, of course, can also say, what about in count vowels? 143. Again, sounds pretty plausible to me. But it seems kind of annoying. Like, what if the file doesn't exist? What if the file isn't readable? Right? I've got to add all this error handling in here. Well, we can do better. And I'm going to create a second file here. So file. Oh, I can do new from there. No, I can't. New text file. We'll say here count vowels 2. That paste what we had. Here's what I'm going to do. What I really want is for argparse to take the file name, open the file, and make it available for reading. That's what I really want. To do that, I just have to say, not just required equals true, but type equals what? Well, back in olden times, back in the Python 2 days, file was actually a type. And so back in those days, I could say type equals file, it would be read correctly. Nowadays, it's a little more complex. We have to say argparse file type R, meaning this is a file that we are going to open for reading. And well, now what? How does that help things? Well, first of all, no longer do I have to say for one line in open. I can just say for one line in args.f. It's already open. And so if I run this now, it should work. Oops. Here. Oh, I know, because I'm not in there. I'm here. Hold on. I'm going to say count vowels 2 of Etsy password. Oh, minus F once again. I will learn this one of these days. There we go. It gave me the same count. Think about what just happened. I passed an argument here on the command line. Inside of the program, inside of argparse, it got that string, it opened the file, and then it passed me that file object, so I don't need to worry about opening it. And wait a second, what if I give it a file that doesn't exist? Look at that. Look at that. argparse figures that out for us. We don't need to worry about it. It might, just might also be smart enough to figure out if we have binary files, but I'm far from sure about that. Yeah, can't open it, so fine. And I wonder if I give it a binary file here. Oh, I know, I'll just give it my headshot. No, okay, there it's giving us the problem as we do the iterating over the lines, fine. So, what I wanted to do here was give you a quick introduction to argparse. There are so many other things you can do. You can give things defaults as we saw, but you can also say, I'm only going to allow values of the and you give it a list of values. You can, let's just go through here quickly. You can have formatting of the help. You can have prefix characters. You can have defaults. We already saw that. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. The different things you can do with argparse. The only problem is that it takes a little bit of time to sort of get into the mind space of it. But in my experience, it doesn't take that long. And what I've done here, hopefully, is half or 2/3 of the battle. So if and when you want to be able to use argparse, you'll be able to do that also. Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts, and so on and so forth.
I'll start mixing things a little bit. Sometimes you want things to be keyword arguments, but then also allow the things to be positional, like Python functions, for example. You can say when you call them 1, 2, 3, or you say x equals 1, y equals 2, z equals 3. Some positional, some does argparse support it?
I think in argparse you need to be very explicit about whether it's either a positional argument, meaning that it will be fed into one of those parsed attributes by virtue of where it is, or it's a keyword argument. I don't think that you can have the flexibility of doing either.
How can you mix them then?
Oh, well, you can have more. Oh, I see what you mean. In the same program, you can definitely have more than one. Yes, absolutely. All right, sorry, I didn't understand. So let's try this. So I do here many args.py. So if I say here, can I just paste this? Will this work? Yes. Okay. Boilerplate. I'm not going to retype it each time. So if I say here, for example, add argument. Let's do this. Parser add argument. Let's do n. Help equals number of lines to read. Required equals. Actually, let's say true. All right, and then we're going to get this, and then we're going to say this, and then I'm going to say here we'll use enumerate again. X. And I'll say if index is greater than equal to args.n break. So here we have one positional argument n and one keyword argument minus f. So now what I can do is I can run this. Many args. So now if I say many args, py minus h. Oh, it didn't like that. Wait, required is invalid argument for, because I can't do that for positionals. Fine, be that way. Because I guess positionals are all required. Fine, be that way. Okay, so what you see now is it calls these positional arguments, number of lines to read, and then here, minus f, this is an option. So if I say now many args.py of 3 and minus f etc password, how to spell it right? Because it's a string. Haha, forgot to turn that into an integer. Let's do that. Here. That. All right, now, there we go. So it only looked through the first 3 lines of the password. So, and now if I don't provide it with that 3, it's going to complain. Following arguments are required to end. So positional arguments are required no matter what. And it's only the keyword arguments that can have a default and be optional. That's sort of the distinction they make.
Can you do the minus FEC password and then 3? And this will be okay?
I believe so, even though in Python that would not be okay. Yeah, it's okay with that. Because this is
the
seen as
positional
one thing.
is anything other than the keyword arguments. And then they read it.
Right. So basically, it looks like it sort of grabs all the keyword arguments, put those in, I have to assume, a dictionary, and then that deals with the positional arguments one by one.
Okay. We have a question from David in the chat. He's asking, why use positional arguments instead of a tuple?
For Panda's workout. Inner tuples.
Well,
David, explain your question first.
I'm still trying to understand it for data frames and pandas, referring to Reuven's great title, A Panda's Workout. And
Oh, his
I'm
books.
trying to
Okay.
I'm trying to distinguish between positional arguments and tuples.
Okay, so this is fine. It doesn't have to do with argparse. I'm just trying to like switch my brain to the like a different track, as it were. That's fine. So say that again. So positional arguments in pandas versus tuples.
It's in data frames with the pandas that they're intertuples. So it's a different methodology to arrive, and I'm trying to discern which is a better use case for what scenario.
Oh, I think that I'm getting into it, what he's saying. When you David, I want to correct you first of all. What Reuven showed at the beginning was argv. Argv is returns a list, not a tuple. But here, I'll let Reuven answer this.
Well, I mean, like, I would say, let's see. So argparse and pandas are sort of in different, I would say often, not always, but often different universes, right? Where pandas is dealing with data that we want to read in, process, put out. And argparse is all about, well, I want to have my program get arguments. I can easily imagine a program that, for example, reads in a CSV file, does some processing on it, and then spits something new out. And you would want to pass the name of that file as an argument to the program. But like pandas will never see argparse stuff, and argparse will never see panda stuff. They're sort of in like two different parts of the program. Now, as for the tuples here, I mean, whenever you call a function, any function in Python that takes arguments, those arguments are passed in a tuple behind the scenes. You might not know it, you might not see it, but there's a tuple there going on. And so if I call a function with 10, 20, 30, there's a tuple with 10, 20, 30 in it. That is super, super common. I would say that's the most common use for tuples, even though we don't typically see it. Now, in pandas, what we often tell people if they're learning Python is, well, a tuple, it's kind of like an immutable list, but of course you should never think of it that way. Instead, you should think of it as like a record or something. Pandas then takes it in a totally new direction, that because it has all these nested data structures, like you've got a multi-index, so you've got this inside of this inside of this, sometimes it'll use lists and sometimes it'll use tuples, and sometimes it's not obvious which, and sometimes it doesn't matter which. And that can be very, very confusing. And I think part of the problem is that Python, so I learned Python at the same time as I learned Perl. And the Perl philosophy was always, there's more than one way to do it. And the Python philosophy was always, no, there's one right way to do it, and this is that way. And Pandas is like, no. Actually, we're going to give you lots of ways to do things. And it seemed back in my young years that the Perl approach was great. Oh, I get flexibility. I can choose to do it however I want. How lovely. Until you have to start debugging that code. And you go into some code and you read, you say, who was the idiot who wrote this? Oh my God, it was me. And then you're really stuck, right? So Python is trying to limit our choices in order to make our code more readable and debuggable. And I think that Pandas has fallen into the trap of making it too easy to do things in too many different ways. And they're starting to pull back on that. So there are places in Pandas where until now you could use either a list or a tuple, and they're starting to give you warnings saying, no, here you'll have to use a tuple in the future. We're limiting you. And I think this is a long, hard, gradual process, but a good one.
Thank you. Thank you for the excellent answer.
Great. My pleasure.
Okay. Any other questions? Please don't be shy. Well, it's quiet. They probably understood
Stunned
everything.
silence.
Either overwhelmed or perfectly all geniuses now. Let me ask 3 questions then. What if you actually want to pass tuples as an argument. Can you do it?
That is a great question. I'm guessing not, but let's try. Now, whether it's a good idea, that's another question, right? So let's try this here. I'm going to do here new text file.
No,
And
sometimes
then-
you want to pass lists or the tuples or some, things that are more complex.
Yeah, let's see what it'll let us do. And then we'll look at the documentation after this fails colossally. So I'm going to say here, T and tuple of stuff. Actually, I think I do know what's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this here. And I'm going to say here, I'm just going to print args. Okay, so now I've got one positional argument of type tuple. Let's see what happens. I'm going to get rid of some of these. Blup, blup, blup. There we go. Chmod of tuple. Oh, I have to do the A. Okay, so it did create as a tuple. What if I say here A, B, C? Oh, interesting. So what it is doing is it is running tuple on the string we pass it, right? So if I pass it,
Add commas in the middle.
well, that's a tuple. Oh, add commas. No. So then we'll have comma, like that's going to be a 5-element tuple.
Let's
Just
see.
think of it. Right here. Because what's happening is, think of it this way. When I say the type is int, it's going to get the string, run int on the string, and then assign the value to the attribute. Here, when I say the type is tuple, it's going to run tuple on the string. As you might know, when I say, where's my notebook here? If I say like tuple of a string, right, I get back a tuple. So it's just running tuple on there. In fact, it could be that the whole type mechanism is just like a lie, that it's not really like enforcing types. All it's doing is running it, and if it gets an exception, it's trapping the exception, telling you, "Hey, dummy, this did not work."
Okay, so let's do something more advanced then. If this is a case, are the types set?
Actually, hold on. However, there is a way that you can say that an argument can get more than one value. Right, here we go. N-args. So you say n-args, and then every time it's passed, you get another one. So watch this. If I now say here, I'm going to say, we'll call this n, and like more than one. Type equals, well, it doesn't really. Type equals int, and then n-args equals, I think it's like star something. N-args equals, sure, we'll say plus. Plus means one or more, if I'm not mistaken. Here. So now, if I run this tuple args, now if I call it with ABC, we'll get the two. Oh, but I need to provide the other one too. So if I say 5, so here, look at this. Because I said n args equals plus, now it's a list. And if I say 5, 6, 7, 8, look at that. I have one positional argument, n, but that one positional argument can get multiple values, and those are all stuck into a list, which of course then you can iterate over and do whatever else you want with. That's pretty cool, I think.
So you can actually handle this and stuff like this. Now let's push the limits a little bit more. Let's see. Can you define some class of your own instead of tuple or list that will do something special with the numbers? Isn't it all possible, or is argparse can only apply those int tuple only elements, because those, or basic Python structures like the
yes,
type?
you can. Here, class loud tuple. My def under init self x. We'll say here print I got x. We'll say here like self.x equals tuple of x. All right, it's not really a loud tuple, but loud, what's called loud thing. So now I'm going to say all this A. And this is going to be loud tuple stuff. It's going to be loud thing. All right, now let's see what happens. if I now go back here, now I say ABC. Oh no, I need invalid int value. Because it needs to be. Because I got the order wrong. So first it's going to be this tuple, then loud tuple. Then okay. So if I say here, so if I say ABC, DFG, 5, 6, 7, 8, and look at this. This is it. Yeah, it worked just fine. We were able to use our own class there.
Oh my God, this is powerful because you can actually do things. You can write your own thing. You can write your own code to parse whatever is going on there.
Now do it with
Yeah,
the
you
meta
get a
class.
string and then. Oh my God. Well, looks like we're out of time, folks.
Yeah.
Look, I'll tell you. It, and then I see we have a question from someone as well, from Lila. So I'll tell you, almost inevitably, when I teach advanced Python at companies, they tell me that they really want to do meta classes, and I say, "Are you sure?" Yes. This is one of those very confident things that companies say, which are just completely wrong. And so basically, I start going through meta classes with people, and you can sort of see their brains slowly oozing out of their ears as I'm talking. And at a certain point, like, they're like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point of this? And I have to explain to them, from my perspective, meta classes are fascinating because they help to complete the picture of how Python objects work. But the odds of you actually implementing them in person are almost zero. They used to be almost zero. And then they got even closer to zero because of decorators that do a lot of what meta classes would otherwise do. But like, if you're designing Django, you'll need meta classes. If you're doing something a little smaller, you almost certainly won't. So again, it's sort of intellectually interesting, but people are like, but companies say all sorts of things. I can do a whole talk on like the crazy, stupid things companies say. Like, Anyway. So Lila's question is, what are other ways of passing arguments to a function in Python? So I assume this is sort of a follow-up with when I said that that all arguments are passed as tuples. There is no way around the fact that arguments are passed as tuples. That is just like rock bottom how Python does things. It doesn't matter what you are passing. Whatever arguments you're passing, however many arguments you're passing, they are passed in a tuple. That doesn't mean you see the tuple. When you call a function, you don't see the tuple you're creating, but the function, when it receives the arguments, doesn't see it either because the arguments are assigned to the parameters. It's part of the invisible mechanism behind the scenes. But if you go in and sort of inspect the stack frame from calling a function, you will definitely see that tuple there. So does that mean that like it's always a tuple? Yes. But there are other ways to pass arguments. There are actually a total of 7 ways to pass arguments to, or that the arguments can be assigned to parameters in Python. And they all revolve around the positional versus keyword arguments. And so like some parameters will accept any kind. Some parameters will only accept one kind. Some parameters are optional. Some parameters are mandatory. But at the end of the day, that's just a question of mapping from the elements of that tuple to the parameters, not other than that. You can play some games with, for example, what's it called? In func tools, you have like single dispatch. And you do all sorts of wild stuff there where basically you're getting a function object back that can take some of the arguments, then pass additional arguments along that were stored before. But at the end of the day, like that's just manipulation of tuples still. So it all comes down to tuples, I'm afraid to say.
Well, any more questions to Reuven about this? Questions going once?
It can be more general too, like it can be about Python, it can be about I do training, it can be about my life's an open book. Well, mostly.
For the demo, like we want to close down the demo bit. We'll hang around afterwards. Question going twice. And question. Go ahead.
Can I? So I presume that the same thing will work if you had two tuples, one after the other, or dictionaries.
Yes, absolutely.
Just as,
Absolutely.
okay.
Each one
Just
will
as
get
you
one
did
argument.
just as you did for the class, you could just as well have a dictionary instead.
For sure. For sure.
Okay.
Well, it's fine. I didn't know that argparse can do those things. I must say, I've seen pieces of code with argparse, but I've never seen. So I was surprised. It's for the good.
Good. Good. Good.
Okay. Questions going a third time? Anyone? Okay. Don't go away. We're sticking around here. We're just closing off the recording. But first, before we close off the recording, I want to thank Reuven and everyone. Make some noise, unmute yourself, do some noise, do some handshakes, reactions, whatever.
Thank you.
There. Anyway, so I'm gonna close off the recording, but don't go away.